why we don't cremate, because first of all, the body is sacred, and also we believe in resurrection. When Mashiach comes, those who passed on will be resurrected. The resurrection of the dead, it's part of our faith. More about that another time. Another interesting topic is in this Torah portion said is Aaron passes away, Miriam passes away, and then we're going to read later, not today, about how Moshe passes away. So it seems like there's now becoming a whole transformation in the nation. They left Egypt, they suffered slavery, and now they had this story of the spies. Miriam passes away, and with her goes away the what? Who remembers? What was in her merit? The well of Miriam. The water. They literally had a traveling water fountain with them. They never had the water. So it's interesting how, again, in spite of everything, they start to cry and scream, we're now going to die of thirst in Egypt, in the desert. It's amazing no matter what happens. So God says to Moshe, go talk to the rock and tell it to give forth water. Moshe is so, you know how the kid starts complaining. Moshe not only hits it once, hits it twice. And water comes out. And God says to Moshe, why did you lose faith in me? I told you to talk to the rock and you hit the rock. It's almost like you of all people didn't listen to what I told you. And the literal consequence is that which is not really the only reason, that Moshe is now told by God, you will not enter into the land of Israel. So in school we were taught that one of the reasons Moshe doesn't enter into the land of Israel is because he hit the rock instead of talking to it. But the point I want to make is really not this, but the real reason Moshe doesn't go into Israel is because his people didn't go into Israel. We spoke about it last week. The whole generation of the Jews, the Israelites and the Jews who left Egypt passed away in the desert. Remember, except for the women. They remained in the desert. Moshe remains with his people. Moshe goes with the people. He stays with his ship. That's why Moshe doesn't go into Eretz Yisrael. But now let's analyze for a few minutes, why does Moshe hit the rock when God says, speak to the rock? There was another time that the same thing happened way back, 40 years previously. The Jews had just left Egypt. There was no water yet. There was no well of Miriam. There was a rock. So God says, the people cry out, we should have stayed in Egypt. We're going to die of thirst here in the desert. So God says to Moshe, what's the problem? Take your stick, your famous staff that hit the Nile and turned it to blood, that hit the Nile and all the frogs came out. Hit the rock and water will come forth. And Moshe hits the rock in Chorev 40 years earlier, and lo and behold, water flows from the rock. So now Moshe applies the same tactic. Water flowed then from the rock. Water is going to flow again from the rock by hitting it. But God said, no, now I told you not to hit the rock. I told you to talk to the rock. But why? And the response, the answer lies in the terminology. The rock 40 years ago was called Sur. The rock here is called Selah. Jewish mysticism explains what's the difference between a rock there and a Selah here. Two different Hebrew words, two different types of rocks. A tzur, a rock back 40 years earlier, is a rock that when you crack it open, inside is also very hard. It's rock through and through. A Selah is a rock that's hard on the outside, but inside it contains moisture. It contains softness. It contains water. Allah Selah, hach, hach. There's a song, Hasidic song. On the rock you'll hit, hit, hit. On the rock you'll hit, hit, and water will come out. And this is symbolic of the person, that if you touch the person enough times, water will flow. The soul will be revealed. It's a Hasidic melody. So there, the Jews had just left Egypt. They were like a hard sore, a hard rock, inside and out. They endured 210 years of coarse, harsh slavery, imprisonment, torture. They were hardened people. They were broken people in a sense, broken from 210 years of being pushed down. So they required a language they could understand. Hit the rock, get the water. Have the plagues to punish the Egyptians. The whole approach had to be one of showing them strength from God. They had to see there's a ruler in the universe, and it had to come away with shock treatment. Hit the rock, get the water. Hit the water, the turn into blood. The plagues, the death of the firstborn, the splitting of the sea. Everything was radical, tough, severity, justice. God was trying to transform them from slaves into free people. There had to be a little shock treatment going on. Like we discussed, you could take a person out of slavery, but you can't take slavery out of the person. It's an emotional, psychological status. Like if you saw the movie Shawshank Redemption, remember Morgan Freeman? He's in the supermarket, his shift is over, he's bagging groceries, the poor guy. And he says to the supervisor, "May I use the bathroom?" And she's like, "Of course you could use the bathroom." He was so used to every step he has to ask permission. So they had a slave mentality, required hitting of the rock to get the water. There, if you want to get through to them, you need to use a little bit more of a tough approach. But now it's 40 years later. It's the children of the slaves. It's the children of the Holocaust survivors. It's the next generation. They didn't experience Nazi terrors. They didn't experience Pharaoh's whip. They're living in a free world now. There, you need a different approach, God is saying to Moses. Now you need an approach of a kind of talking, compassion, discussion. You don't need to hit the rock. You just say to the rock, "We need water," and water will come out. Now, they're tough, but inside there's water, there's moisture. They're a softened people now. It's not like yesteryear people said the Rebbe rammed them on the head with the ruler. Now you get rammed, you get a lawsuit. Our generation, God is telling Moses, this new generation that's going into Israel doesn't require a patch. They require logic, talking, compassion, kindness. This is how you educate youth today. You teach them the right way by being a living example and showing them love and compassion. Doesn't mean you don't need discipline in the classroom. Doesn't mean you don't need judgment when it's called upon. But the first line of defense has to be talk, compassion, understanding. So God says to Moshe, that's why you're going to stay here with your people. You're not going into the land of Israel because you're part of the old generation. And now Joshua will take the people into the land because we now need a new paradigm, a new reality. God forbid not to undermine Moshe's direction, but now a new type of leadership is required. A new type of approach is required to enter in the Holy Land. The approach of talking to the rock. Because the rock is no longer that hardened person. The rock has a soft inside. The rock is a different type of person. And that's America today, if you think about it. You know, you talk of children raised by their parents who are Holocaust survivors. They'll tell you their parents' approach was very radical because they were used to, you could die if you told someone your name. There's a woman in Wilton who speaks about the Holocaust. Her parents were survivors. She says, she was once with her mother and someone said, "Oh, how old are you?" And she said, "I'm 30. And her mother said, "Shah, why'd you tell them your age?" She says, "Ma, why not?" Because during the Holocaust, you couldn't say anything. They were traumatized. So when it came to America, of course, they couldn't talk. You know, you couldn't say anything. So God is saying to Moshe, it's a new reality now. It's a new reality, a new direction in life that we have to take.
Wait, why couldn't you say your age during the Holocaust?
It's not only the age, like your birthday, your name, everything you lied about. My friend told me her mother said, never tell the truth about anything because you never know what they'll get you on. I don't think it's the age per se. This is the story she told me. I think it's just the whole attitude of secrecy. You know, there was a Russian family lived in our community here years ago. They passed away. And when you called the house, they would literally answer like it was the KGB. Hello? And you could see why, because my parents ran away from Stalin. They were scared. A phone call meant trouble. A doorbell ring meant KGB coming to arrest you. So it's a psychological thing. It's not something you could put your finger on. But kids who were raised by their parents or Holocaust survivors, can you blame them what they went through? I mean, you can't even question it. But God is telling Moshe now, we have to prepare for the new reality, the new type of person. It's a different generation now. You know, that's why I was talking to the Federation and I said, you cannot center Jewish education on the Holocaust. That cannot be the key focus. You have to teach about it as part of who we are. Now the focus has to be the joy of Judaism, because why would an American kid want to be Jewish if all you talk about is how terrible it was? We were persecuted, we were killed, we were shot, we were destroyed, we were banished, we were executed, we were put in prison. What is the kid thinking? I don't want to be part of that. You must teach it as part of life, but you cannot say that's Judaism. Judaism is not only about the persecution. Judaism is also the joy of Judaism, the love of Judaism, the happiness of being Jewish. And that should be the educator's approach. But again, we can't never tell kids about all the tragedies. That would be also that's not a way of education. Not everything is lily pure. But you must teach kids why Judaism is so exciting and good and how it enhances their life. So the whole approach of education has to be totally different now. Anybody have any thoughts on this? Or
I just had a quick question that came when we talked about cleaning your hand, purifying yourself. The tradition of when you leave a cemetery of washing your hands, does that have anything to do with it?
Yes. When you leave a cemetery, whether you're visiting or you're at a funeral, when you're out of the cemetery property, you'll notice many cemeteries have a washing cup and water. You wash 6 times. 1, 2. Yes, purification, like when you leave the bathroom, you wash in the kitchen, when you wake up in the morning. Many of the traditions come from the laws of the Holy Temple. Water purifies. Water has the purifying qualities. That's why God purged the world with the flood, Noah's flood. 40 measurements, 40 days and 40 nights, 40 measurements of water in the mikvah. So many of the laws with water have to do with purification. Water is a symbol of purity. We purify ourselves through water. That's how God set it up. And how do we find this in the Kabbalah? It says in the Garden of Eden, it's talking about the Garden of Eden, and suddenly it talks about a river that flowed through the garden, out of the garden. And after Adam and Eve are banished, the Kabbalah says they're sitting at the edge of the river. What is this? What is the significance of this tidbit? Why is it talking about it? To teach us that there is a purification that happens to the water. That's the first time we learn about water purifying. And you wanted to ask something? Oh, okay. So, Carrie, is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to share a little tidbit, which I love, and then we're going to go to the story of Balak, the famous story with the donkey. Another interesting tidbit is, if you recall, when the Jews left Egypt, they fulfilled the promise of taking Joseph's bones. Joseph was buried in Egypt, remember? In the Nile. They threw him into the Nile in a box, and they found the box, And they took the box of Joseph's bones to bury in Israel, which they did in Shechem. And if you remember, a few years ago, they gave up that territory to the Arabs, and the Arabs destroyed the tomb of Joseph in retribution. Terrible story. So when Jews are about to enter the land of Israel and Moses finds out the terrible news from God that he can't go, he said, how come Joseph's bones are going? How come Joseph, at least let me be buried in Israel? I'm going to die here, but at least let me be buried in Israel like Joseph. And of course, God says, no, you're going to remain here. So why indeed Joseph gets to be buried in the land of Israel, but Moses remains in the desert? I think we don't know where Moses is buried. I'll tell you why in a minute. And the Kabbalah shares a very beautiful insight that if you look at Joseph's life was intertwined with Israel. When he was put into prison because Potiphar's wife claims that he tried to, seduce her, he says to the butler, when you get out of prison, please tell the king that there is a Hebrew in prison, a Hebrew from the land of the Hebrews, and ask him if he will release me as well. Now, when Joseph says this to the butler, the commentaries say, what do you mean there was a land of the Hebrews? The Hebrews lived in one little part of Israel. Israel was occupied by 81 nations. Israel wasn't the country of the Jews yet. The fact that Joseph declared it the country, the land of the Hebrews, showed that he didn't care if there's 81 nations living in Israel. It's my land. I was sold for my land, the land of the Hebrews, he tells the butler. He identifies himself from the land of Israel, from my land of Israel. And when Potiphar's wife accuses him of this act of trying to hurt her, she says, the Hebrew man, that Hebrew man, he tried to hurt me. Now, Joseph was the viceroy of Egypt. For political purposes, he should never have let anyone know he was a Hebrew. He should have kept his identity a secret. Why ask for trouble when there was so much anti-Semitism? He identified as a Hebrew. Everyone knows he was a Hebrew, and he says, and I'm from the land of the Hebrews. So God says to Moshe, Joseph's soul is intertwined with the land of Israel. You can't separate the two. So he will be buried in the land of Israel. But Moshe, if you look at all the passages, he's identified as the Egyptian. When he meets Jethro's daughters, when he's running away from Egypt, they come to their father. They said, there's an Egyptian man here. So Moshe's soul was not intertwined with the land of Israel like Joseph's. Moshe is buried in the desert with his people in an unspecified location. It says God does not reveal to us where Moshe is buried. The simple reason God did not want it to become a place of worship by the idolaters. They would find Moses and they would pray there. They like to convert grave sites into places of idolatry. So there's an interesting medrash, and then we'll move on. The Romans sent messengers to their idol called the Baal Pa'ar. They wanted to discover where Moses is buried. So they sent messengers to their idol, thinking the idol will reveal. The idol was what? A piece of stone. So the messengers who stood on top of the mountain said, Moses is buried below this mountain in the Sinai desert. And the messengers who stood below looked up and said, no. Moses is buried above in the mountain. Comes the Torah and says, God says, I will not reveal where Moses is buried. So till this day, we do not know where Moshe is buried. No one knows, not the Jews, not the non-Jews. That's the story of the Medrash. Till this day, we do not know where Moshe is buried. His resting place is a secret. When Mashiach comes, it will be revealed. So now let's go to the very cryptic story that happens in the next Torah portion called Balak.
I need to leave.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you so
fine.
much, Freida, and thank you for the moment of silence for
And
Bonnie.
we'll say a little prayer for Bonnie and give a little tzedakah.
Thank you. I will.
Good news,
you.
good news.
Okay.
So the Torah portion is called Balak. And remember last week we said that why is the Torah portion called Korach? Korach was a revolutionary. He went against Moshe. Yet from Korach we learn very important lessons in life. The same thing happens. This Torah portion is called Balak after the Midianite Moabite king. Okay? Balak is a Moabite king, and he hears how the Jews are conquering the land, right? They're moving along, they're conquering, and he's petrified. So he sends messengers to the prophet Bilam. Bilam was a non-Jewish prophet, famous prophet. His name was Bilam or Balaam, and he sends messengers. I need you to go, Bilam, and curse the Jews. You'll curse the Jews, they won't be able to conquer my land. So Bilam goes to sleep because Bilam, he was a Gentile prophet, but he could only communicate with God in dreams. He was not given the power like Moses and Aaron, where during the day they could talk to God. And he asks God, may I go curse the Jewish people? I was asked. God said, absolutely not. They are my blessed people. I cannot allow you to go curse them. So he goes back to the messengers. He says, no, God doesn't let me. You know, I'm a prophet of God. My power comes from God. I can't curse the Jewish people. They go back to the king. The king assumes that Balaam or Bilam didn't want to say yes because he didn't send dignified messengers. He sent simple messengers. So he sends now noblemen, his ministers. And the ministers come back to Bilam and say, Bilam, we need you to curse the Jewish people. And we're going to give you whatever you want, which means wealth, prestige. So Bilam said, didn't I already tell you previously that God said no? But you know what? Spend the night. They spend the night. During the night, he asks God again, God, can I go and curse the Jewish people? And God says, okay, you want to go? Go. Very strange. So he gets up in the morning and he tells the nobleman, okay, yes, I'm going to go with you. And they're thrilled. Look what's going on here. Yes, no, yes. And the Torah describes, he gets on his donkey and God is angry. What do you mean? First God says, no, don't go. Then God says, oh yes, you want to go with them? Go with them. He gets on his donkey to go with them, and the Torah says, and God is angry. Didn't God just say, go with them? Okay. So he gets on his donkey, and he's following along with the nobleman, and suddenly the donkey sees an angel of God holding a sword in front of him. So the donkey gets petrified. Now, Bilam doesn't see the angel. The angel is invisible only to the donkey. So what does the donkey do? The donkey veers off the path. Bilam sees his donkey is veering off the path. He begins to beat the donkey. Why are you veering off the path? What's wrong with you? We got to go that way. So the donkey resumes trekking along, and they come to a vineyard. You know, remember, they're traveling on the road. They come to a vineyard with two walls between the vineyard. And again, the angel appears with the sword to stop them. The donkey sees the angel blocking the path, so the donkey veers off and hits the wall of the vineyard, and Bilam's foot gets bashed. So Bilam begins beating the donkey. What are you doing? My foot is destroyed. You bashed my foot. Then he beats the donkey again. The donkey keeps going, and now the angel with the sword is blocking the entire road. The donkey has nowhere to go. So the donkey crouches down. The donkey stops. I can't go forward. If I go forward, I'll be attacked by the angel. So Bilam starts beating the donkey. Why'd you crouch down? So now the donkey looks at Bilam and begins to talk. and says to Bilam, why are you beating me? Why are you hurting me? You know me for so many years. I've been your donkey for years and years. I'm not a new donkey that you just rented in Avis. Rent the donkey. I'm not a new donkey. I've been your loyal donkey all these years. Why are you hitting me? You think I just crashed because I have nothing better to do? So Bilam says, what? You humiliated me. You embarrassed me. Look, everybody's looking how my donkey is going to the right, is going to get to me in the vineyard, and now refuses to move. How do I look in front of all these noblemen? You humiliated, you embarrassed me, thus I'm hitting you. Bilam doesn't even address the fact that his donkey is talking. His donkey never spoke before. He doesn't say, oh my gosh, my donkey is talking. What's going on here? It's almost comical. It's like a comic strip. So now the angel lets himself or herself be revealed in front of Bilam. Bilam sees the angel suddenly. The angel says to Bilam, why are you hitting your donkey? It's my fault the donkey didn't move the 3 times. I was blocking the donkey. If anything, be angry at me, not at the donkey. So Bilam says to the angel, oh, so you want me to go back now? Is this an indication that God wants me to go back? So the angel says, no. You go forward, but you can only say what God tells you to say. You cannot say what you want to say. You have to say what God wants you to say. So the end of the story, he goes forward, and he, instead of cursing the Jewish people, God puts in words of blessing. 3 beautiful poems, prose of blessings. And 3 gorgeous blessings come out of Bilam's mouth. And of course, Balak is like abhorred. How did this happen? And the last one is even included in our daily prayers. And that's the end of the story. So Bilam ends up praising and the Jewish people in the most beautiful way and blessing them. So now let's analyze this very strange story. Let's first ask the question, what's with the wishy-washiness of God? No, don't go. Yes, go, but only say what I tell you to say. No, don't go. I'm angry. Why are you going? The angel, should I go back? No. Go forward. Say what I want you to say. Yeah, no, yes, no, yes. So if it's you and me and we can't decide on the color of the paint color, and for 4 months the painter is bringing every sample, we're indecisive. Okay, you can't decide which couch, you can't decide which appliance. Okay, we're wishy-washy, but God can't make up his mind? No, don't go. Okay, yes, go. I'm angry at you. Why are you going? Okay, go. What's going on? Second thing, what's with the talking donkey? Why did God make the donkey talk? Couldn't God just have put the angel with the sword and say to Bilam, no, stay over here, don't go. If you go, you got to only bless. What's the whole story with the talking donkey? Why a talking donkey? Right? Any other questions we could think of? So the story is like this. The story is like this. God says to Bilam, don't go. My people are blessed. I don't want you cursing my people. Now, what's one word nobody wants to ever hear? One word you never want to hear. Your children never want to hear it for sure.
No.
No, exactly. No.
Oh.
We never want to hear the word no. When we hear the word no, in our minds, it's never no, it's yes. When your kid asks you a question, they really want yes. Ma, can I stay out tonight at 11 o'clock with my friends? We're going to hang out. And you say, no, I don't want you hanging out till 11 o'clock at night. The kid said, hey, what does the kid hear? Oh, yes. My mother, maybe she'll say yes. In our minds, if we want something, we cannot accept the no. So when Bilam first asked God, and God says, absolutely not. And then the next night he asks God again. God says, well, If he wants to do it, he's going to do it. The road you want to take, you will take. And God knows human nature. So God says to Bilam, okay, you want to go, go. Because I know you want to go. Because I already told you no. If you didn't really want to go, you wouldn't have asked me again. Can I go hang out with your friends? No. Kid asked the next day. Okay, go. I go. I know you're going to go anyway, so why go, go. But God says to Bilam, go with them, imam. And the pasuk says he went itam with them. I just want to check this because it's too verbatim. Give me 1 second.
Mhm.
I want to make sure I'm giving you the right word. Yes. What does it mean? God says, go with them, imam. But don't go itam with them. Imam means you're going with somebody. You're hanging out with somebody. But it doesn't mean you have the same political aspirations. You don't practice the same politics. You may not even practice the same religion. You're going with a group of people, but you're not necessarily on the same page as those people. You're not impacted by those people. When you go itam with them means you're going with the same mission as them. So God says to Bilam, okay, you can go, but go imam. Go with them, but don't do what they say, do what I say. Bless the Jewish people. He ends up going itam. He ends up thinking in his mind, yes, I'm going to curse the Jewish people, because he was an anti-Semite. Deep down, he hated the Jews. He wanted the opportunity. So when God sees the intention of Bilam that he goes itam, God is angry. God says, yeah, you wanted to take the road, you're going to take that road, no matter what I say. This underlines a fundamental principle of life. God gives us free choice. This whole story is to teach us that God ultimately gives us free choice. That's why God makes the donkey talk. God says, what does Bilam say when the donkey says, why did you hit me? We have a relationship for many years. Why did you hit me? You really shouldn't have hit me. Instead of saying, hey, my donkey is talking. Wow, this is straight out of the movies. Bilam says, you humiliated me. You hurt my feelings. You embarrassed me in front of the nobleman. He doesn't realize that God just performed a miracle on his behalf to wake him up. He focuses on his ego, his humiliation, instead of saying, hey, a donkey is talking. This must be a sign from heaven. Think about it. You're driving your Chevrolet, and it suddenly, the motor dies down. And it begins talking to you, the car. So would you yell at the car? Or would you say, hey, my car is talking to me. What's going on over here? This must be a sign from heaven. He doesn't do that. What's in front of his eyes, he doesn't realize. He's harping on his humiliation instead of saying, hey, donkey talking. Must be a sign from heaven. Something is going on here. He's so involved in himself, in his arrogance, in his ego, he cannot see what's right in front of him. God says, yeah, you chose the road, the wrong path. You chose to go curse the Jews. And I sent you a talking donkey to kind of change your mind a little, and that didn't work. You still persevered. You're still moving forward. That's why God doesn't show him an angel, because of course, if he would see the angel with the sword, if every time I don't want to use the word sin, if every time you did something that was not in the right way in the Torah and you got struck by lightning, you'd sit there on a chair doing everything right. That's not free choice. God said, here's 613 mitzvahs. You have a choice. You could do the mitzvah or not do the mitzvah. You could buy kosher meat. You cannot buy kosher meat. You could use some of your money for charity. You cannot give charity. But you don't get struck by lightning every time we do. When I lie, do I get struck by lightning? Maybe my nose, Pinocchio. But God gives us free choice. That's the power of humanity. God put us on earth not expecting us to be angels, to make mistakes and choose our paths. That's the power here. God gives Bilam free choice. And even when God tries to kind of shake him up a little, it doesn't happen. So that's why God doesn't put the angel with the sword right in front of Bilam. Because of course, if he'd see an angel with the sword, he'd turn right back and go home. The donkey sees the angel. Bilam only sees the angel at the very end, and then the angel says, no, God said to him, go forward. So two very important concepts here. Free choice. You hear the no, but you want the yes. You will do the yes because you want it. So when you want to take a path, you will take the path. It doesn't matter all the deterrents. We will go and do what we want to do, whether it's right or wrong. We have free choice. But interestingly, God never leaves us. Even when we choose the wrong path, so to speak, God still sends us a talking donkey. God still stands behind his people and near them. Even when we fall, even when we attack, even when we say, there's no God, I don't believe in God. God is a figment of the imagination. God stands beside us and sends us the talking donkey to remind us. But we have to push away our ego sometimes. Sometimes we're so involved in only what we want, what we see, what we need, we don't even see a talking donkey. But that's the power of free choice. You see, the donkey is an animal. Donkeys were not given free choice. That's why God puts the angel with the sword in front of the donkey. The donkeys don't have intellect, so there's no choice, good or bad. They only know one path. Had he put the angel and sword in front of Bilam, of course Bilam wouldn't have gone. Yeah, I'll be killed. Why would I go? It's a threat. But Bilam ultimately then blesses the Jewish people. He ultimately ends up giving the most beautiful blessings to the Jewish people. So the question is, what were the curses? The curses were the opposite of the blessings. So that Bilam says there will be a kingdom of Israel, and we see what ultimately happens. The kingdom is destroyed. We are exiled. So the blessings end up turning actually into the opposite. The blessings turn around because the Jewish people go against the will of God, and there's the destruction of the temples and so on. But the last blessing, we say in our prayers every day, "Matayvu ahalecha Yaakov mishkanei secha Yisrael." How beautiful are the dwelling places of Jacob. Till this day, the Jewish people dwell in the tents of Jacob, our synagogues, our Jewish homes. Till this day, that blessing never turned around. That blessing remains with us, the last blessing of Bilam. The other blessings ended up falling apart because the Jews sinned, we were exiled, our kingdoms were destroyed, and so on. But the blessing that we are dwelling in the tents of Jacob, till this very day, we still dwell in the tents of Jacob. Because our homes, our shuls, our lives are the tents of Jacob. A tent, because when Mashiach comes, that will be our eternal home. Now it's a temporary home. So a tent is symbolic of temporary. We're dwelling in the temporary tents. We're dwelling all over the world. We're in exile, so to speak. When Mashiach comes, we'll all be together in our permanent home, the land of Israel. So that should be our prayer. That should be our blessing. That's what we'll end off today. Next Thursday is a fast day. The 17th day of Tammuz begins the 3 weeks of mourning. What happened on the 17th day of Tammuz, the Romans broke through the walls of Jerusalem, and thus began the destruction of the temple on the 9th day of Av. So the 17th day of Tammuz is a fast day because the 3 weeks of the siege and the war began on the 17th day of Tammuz. And ultimately, they broke through, and it was a terrible day of destruction. So I'm not sure we're going to have a class yet. I'll let you know. Also because Wednesday is the car parade, so it might be too busy. But I'll let you know. I'll send that an email. I'll send that a notice. So with that in mind, let's have a wonderful week, a fruitful week, a healthy week.
to everybody too. Okay. Thank you.
Pleasure. Have a good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, Freida.
Good Shabbos. Good
Shabbos.
Shabbos. Speak to you soon. Be well.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Love.